Welcome to the Stress Detox podcast. My name is Edie Goditis, and I am your host. I support female leaders with stress management and embodiment coaching. I am a best-selling author and also a yoga, breathwork, and meditation facilitator. I lead workshops for corporate groups and organizations in the realm of stress management, and I also facilitate one-day and week-long retreats. Today's topic is, what is stress? We've all heard about it, we all talk about it, but what is it actually? And what are some of the ways that it can creep up and maybe impact our life on a bigger scale than we might be aware of? So, stress is a biological response to any type of perceived threat. We are literally biologically hardwired to stay alive and to find safety if we feel threatened in any way. So in our body, when we are out in the world, we have a signal then that is sent from our brain directly down to our adrenal glands, and they then release adrenaline. And that sends that whoosh of energy through the body that helps to mobilize us into action to either fight or flee, or in some cases, freeze. And that happens so quickly that we don't even really think about it. It just is like, bam, safety, let's do this. So, what actually happens with all that? That is what I'm going to speak a little bit more to today, just so we can understand it and then recognize how, in some cases, we are navigating these intense stress responses when there isn't actually a life or death threat going on. So, we're going to talk about physiology for a moment. So we have our central nervous system. Within our central, or around the central nervous system, is the peripheral nervous system. And then part of the peripheral nervous system is the autonomic nervous system. And these are bundles of nerves that communicate all throughout the body, from the brain through the body and through the spine. So the autonomic nervous system is connected with our automatic sort of responses, the things we do without really having to think about it. So our heart, our lungs, all of our vital organs, so to speak, as well as going to the washroom and different things like that. And within the autonomic nervous system, we have the sympathetic nervous system, which is our fight and flight response, and our parasympathetic nervous system, which is the freeze response for a perceived threat. And our parasympathetic nervous system is also responsible for social engagement as well as rest and digest. And the sympathetic nervous system is amazing because it really does keep us alive. The sympathetic nervous system is something we tap into when we're moving our body, when we're running, when we're hiking. So it's good to use the sympathetic nervous system at different times, but we don't want to get locked into a state of fight or flight all the time, because our body is not designed to be firing adrenaline constantly. It does lead to wear and tear. So what can happen over life, and this is like generationally as well as within our own lifetime, is we can experience an event. Usually it's age 0 to 7. That's when we kind of create our perspectives through which we see the world during those early developmental years. So if there is an event that has happened in our life where our 0 to 7 brain perceived it as a threat, and in that experience, we did not process the fullness of that fight, flight, or freeze reaction, if we didn't feel safe to do that and we hid, or we just stuffed down how we were feeling because we didn't want to cry, we still hold that in the body. And if there's something then that happens with us later in life where we feel a threat, that old survival stress gets triggered again. So then we're firing a stress response that's almost like this fight flight response, even though we're not being chased by a bear, we might just be sending an email to a coworker, or we might be thinking of having a conversation to resolve a challenge with a loved one. So it can get tricky because our body is amazing and it keeps us alive. And our subconscious mind, which is where all of these programs and our lens through which we see the world of past or future, the subconscious, it does not know the difference between what is that literal threat of being chased by a bear and our life being on the line versus us thinking about sending an email and that firing the exact same sort of response in the body. And so there's something called the stress cycle. And the stress cycle is like, I see it kind of like a wave. You can see it like a circle, however you'd like. Basically, you're at your baseline. I don't know, let's say you're walking through a beautiful alpine meadow, and then you see a bear. So you go from being all like peaceful and happy and grateful, and then it's like, oh, there's a bear. And your whole body is like, high alert. What's happening? Am I safe? Where's the quickest route to exit? What's going on here? We get into like tunnel vision to really assess what potential threat might be in front of us. And then that bear miraculously leaves the scene and we're totally safe again. The bear is nowhere to be seen. We're totally fine. They're gone. Our stress level then will come back down because we have the sympathetic nervous system that's like, okay, hit the gas. I'm on high alert. Am I fighting? Am I fleeing? Am I freezing? What's happening here? And then we have the parasympathetic nervous system, which when it is the emergency brake, that is our freeze response of like, let's just freeze or play dead. But there's the other part of it, which is the gradual break. And the gradual break, so to speak, if we're thinking of it like a car, so gradually slowing down, that's bringing us back to what's called homeostasis, to this sense of inner harmony, where we're able to access again more of that rest and digest, being on this baseline of feeling good, feeling at ease, feeling alert in the mind and present and aware, but relaxed in the body, not on the defense, tight, gripping, all that stuff. So that is the full stress cycle, like the wave. And what happens is sometimes we don't actually end up allowing ourselves to complete the full stress cycle. So we might start to go down a tiny, tiny bit, and then we think of the bear again, and all of a sudden we're back up here. And then we start to come back down a little bit, and then something else, we think of this bear again, and then we're up here. And then we want to just be cool, calm, and collected and act like we're not fazed by seeing the bear or being frightened by it. So we just stuff everything down and we're like, oh, I'm fine, I'm good, everything's great. What are you talking about? Cool, we just saw a bear. It was a foot from me, no problem. That is us not completing the stress cycle. So then we're just constantly suppressing all of the feelings that we had of needing to run or wanting to scream or wanting to jump or being still. All of those impulses are ignored because of whatever facade we have, or we're thinking those thoughts that are just continuing to trigger that spiral so that we're just staying in this state of more high alert and on guard and on the defense. And then if someone comes up to us and is like, hey, are you okay? Like, just relax. And then all of a sudden we realize how like just activated we are. And it's just like, what are you talking about? Oh, my shoulders are up near my ears. Oh, I'm gripping my fists. Oh, I'm clenching my jaw. And we start to notice just how tight we are. And if we think about it, stress really is associated with fear. So in some cases, the stress response is amazing because yes, life or death situations, it keeps us alive. In some cases where we're thinking of a past experience or we're worried about a future potential outcome, then that's where it can become a little bit problematic because then we're not completing the fullness. And then that energy of all that stress and essentially fear gets stuck in our body. And then fear is a contracting energy. So then we're naturally more contracted. And this can be challenging then for us to feel more connected with loved ones, for us to feel relaxed in our body, for us to feel trusting of our choices, for us to feel connected with the bigger presence and maybe different messages and guidance we might like intuitive guidance we might receive. So, recognizing stress, understanding the stress cycle, understanding stressors, things that trigger stress in our life, is very, very imperative to our well-being, especially when we look at how unprocessed stress, how suppressed stress, how by us distracting ourselves away from stress. So using TV, using work, using exercise, food, alcohol, sex, drugs, you name it, different addictions to self-soothe, but not actually support us in processing the stress. Really, it's just distracting us from the feelings within. That can lead to challenges with our health down the road. That can lead to challenges with relationships, with our career, because we're not feeling fully connected and present and whole in our life. We're then operating from this space of constant defense and survival, which limits us from so many other amazing, amazing possibilities. So the stress cycle is very important. We want to be completing the stress cycle. And what I mean by that is, okay, so maybe you do have a really big presentation tomorrow. Maybe you did have a really tough conversation with someone, and all you wanted to do was yell and stomp your feet and punch the air because you were so frustrated at one point for not feeling seen and heard. And maybe you didn't do those things because it wasn't appropriate in the moment. And maybe the fear, the anxiety you felt with the presentation, you didn't show it because you wanted to come off as confident and grounded for what you were doing. That's amazing. It's important that we do show up in those ways. And it's important too, then, that we acknowledge how we were feeling in that moment and we take time to then process that out of our body at the end of the day. So that might mean when you're at home, as you tune into your body and you tune into your the sensations you feel and you notice the environment that you're in. So you're orienting to the space around you that's communicating safety in the moment. And then you notice scanning awareness through your body. If you're sitting on a couch as I am or elsewhere, you can feel the support of what you're sitting on. And then you scan through the body and you start to soften areas of obvious gripping and tension. And then you start to notice your breath. And so from that place then of being grounded, then you might notice, okay, I need to just shake. I need to stomp. I need to move this energy. I need to yell into a pillow as I'm sitting on the couch and my feet are on the ground. I need to move my legs and run with my feet as if I'm running somewhere. Maybe you do literally need to go for a walk around the block and then come back and connect back with your body, scan awareness through it, connect back with your breath, take grounding breaths. So we want to move that energy out of the body. We want to offer a pathway for that stored stress energy out of the body. Journaling can be helpful too. And then we want to come back to the body in a grounded state, checking back in, noticing, okay, do I feel more at ease within myself? Do I feel more grounded within the moment? Do I feel more just peaceful overall? Do I feel a sense of relief? And when we can just start doing these little check-ins for ourselves, it is profound for the impact that it can have on our physical well-being, on our long-term health, on our career success, within our relationships. Because the more connected and curious and caring we are for ourselves and taking care literally of ourselves, the more then we show up from this space of presence and integration, wholeness, when we're in the space of others, so that we're not as easily triggered by them. We're not as reactive, because if something's been said, it's not then triggering a stuffed down emotion or stressor that then just pops out because it needs to come out of the body and we haven't processed it for a week or years. So really doing this work of gentle clearing, I'll say, like every evening or every morning, it's nice to just check in with yourself, can be really, really powerful for helping to reduce stress in your life and helping you with facing challenges too over a longer period of time. The other thing to be mindful for or of with stress, there are three types of stress. The first one is acute stress, which is the short-term stress of that stress cycle that I explained. So you have your baseline where you're feeling pretty good. There's that perceived or literal threat where your body is like high alert, all hands on deck, only focus on the vital organs. What is going on? I need to make sure I'm safe. And then we have everything comes down when the threat is gone. So we come back to our baseline. That is only meant to last for minutes, maybe, yeah, minutes, usually minutes, maybe hours, but it's very, very time sensitive. We have then what's called medium term stress, and that's more associated with, in my experience, like I broke a leg a few years ago. So the recovery time was like 4 to 6 weeks is what they quoted. In reality, it was a lot longer, but for the initial, it was about 6 weeks. There was stress that my body was processing as I was healing because of the shift within my body of adjusting and then literally creating and yeah, like creating new cells, new, like my bone was growing back together, like all those things. So when we have a medium term stress, it can be like compare or not compared, but you can think of something like 4 to 6 weeks where you're recovering from an injury, let's say. You also might notice short-term stress if you're preparing for a presentation or an exam or you're waiting for a medical result. You might, for that time frame of what is like 2 weeks or 4 weeks or 6 weeks, you might notice, depending on the quality of your thoughts, and this is something we'll go into in another episode, you might notice that the weeks leading up to that event, you feel that stress, that uneasiness, that anxiety, and then the event happens and the stress, hopefully everything goes well, and then it comes back down, but it's a longer period. And again, we have to be careful with it because if, let's say, we're preparing for a presentation or an exam, and our thought is the worst case scenario, and that's what we're firing every single day associated with that event, then we're continuing to drive this fear cycle into our body, which is triggering survival stress and this like shot of adrenaline constantly, constantly, constantly. So we want to be careful because we don't obviously want to be living in that state for periods of time. And then the last part, the third type of stress is chronic stress, long-term stress. And this is unfortunately what a lot of the population is living with. I definitely was before, definitely, definitely. And it is something where it's so normal and familiar to us that we don't even know that that is our state that we're living in. It's like it can be generationally that we're carrying things into the world with us. It can be literally from traumatic birth and then carried through. It can be childhood experiences, it can be adulthood experiences, it can be a combination of all of it. And what can happen again if we don't have resources, tools, awareness to process these different feelings from these events in the moment, we're carrying that with us, and then other events are happening that are constantly triggering fear and lack and concern and overwhelm. So then that stress cycle, instead of it being like a beautiful wave, it's kind of like up here and then down and then up and then down. And it's more like this constant, and we never come down. And the problem with it is we're not designed, as I mentioned, to be in a short term in that stress response all the time. We're not designed to be having adrenaline and cortisol constantly pumping through the body. It creates wear and tear where we get complications that we might notice related to digestion or skin or sleep or like brain fog and headaches and different back pain. And it can create all kinds of other issues and ailments down the road as well. And it's simply a survival tactic because there's been so much that we've lived through, or the meaning that we've given to what we've experienced has been so anchored in fear and scarcity that we're constantly in this state of high alert and defense. So those are the three types of stress. And then again, we have our stress cycle, and the Nagoski sisters speak about it so beautifully in their book, Burnout, where they speak to the importance of completing the stress cycle, where we really need to just shake stuff off. So if we're walking down the street as a female and a person like cat calls at us in the moment, we might want to yell or fight back, but we also probably don't want to engage. So we might just not even acknowledge it and keep walking. In reality, we need to still process that immediate impulse. So when we get home later, we need to do that. We need to honor it. So awareness is always the first step. And I hope this episode is helpful to you. I hope it's shed some light at a very high level. I'm not a doctor, so if you're curious for a deeper dive into the physiology of all of this and looking at the neurology as well, Andrew Huberman of Huberman Lab Podcast is phenomenal. And also the work of Irene Lyons and Peter Levine is also phenomenal. So definitely I'll be sharing those links here further down so you can access them for extra resources. But I will leave it at this for you right now, just to give you a simple snapshot of what it is and how it might be creeping up into your everyday. So thank you so much for listening. Please like, comment, share. And if you have any other questions, I'm always happy to chat via email. So I hope you have a beautiful day wherever you are, and I'm sure I will see you soon. Bye.